Everyone, this is Mary O'Connor, a 20-year journey from analog to digital. That's her presentation. She's a classically trained painter and old school photographer, a Buddhist nun, and now a blockchain enthusiast who has been participating in a lot of our forums and learning a lot. Thank you, Mary, for that. My her light journey began in a dark room in Amsterdam, circa 1995. And she's looking forward to the enormous changes and possibilities of NFTs that can bring to her and to her art. Her two passions are art and Buddhism. And they will collide, cooperating, and will reimagine with NFTs and whatever comes next. Mary, the floor is yours.
Okay, let's see if I can share my screen. So can you guys see my, can you see my screen? Is that actually working? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Okay. So I learned photography in a very traditional method. And, we would, put a film into a camera. We had 36 shots on the film. And you had to be very careful that every shot, did something. And you looked at the light and you measured the light. And as you grew in your experience, you understood what settings to put on the camera just by looking at the light. And the second part of that whole process was what you would do in the darkroom. And you had a lot of chemicals. And so basically, it is a very different process from the ease with which we can now take mobile phones and just take a picture and instantly we see it. There was usually a couple of days before you would process the film. And then once that was done, you had to go into the darkroom and get your chemicals and your paper and, try and make a print that, and there was a lot of mistakes that would happen in that process. And around the mid-90s, I was working in a darkroom because I really wanted to learn the secrets of the darkroom techniques. And we were doing black and white prints for some quite famous photographers. And there was a long testing process before you would actually get to do a print. And there was these periods of 3 minutes. So every time you did a test, you had to wait 3 minutes before it all processed through the machine. So you could look and see whether you had corrected the light exposure correctly or not. And so there were lots of test strips lying around, and I just started playing with the test strips by sticking them under the enlarger and seeing what would happen. So this was the first one that, if I click this, oh, it is working. This was the first one that I made. So you can see this is kind of like a reverse print of a cat. And I took a scissors and I started cutting out little bits of things and seeing what would happen with how much light I needed to put on it. And that led to me, using these 3-minute blocks, that you had a lot of 3-minute blocks in the day, to create a series of artworks. And these are some of them. And so they were quite primitive and quite simple. So, you were cutting out a piece of paper and you were seeing what happened with the amount of light that you would put there. And, to create something that had like more whitish, you had to hold back the light. So you had to like play with your hands and everything. So it was a very laborious process. And then, of course, you had to process it through the chemicals. And then it got, eventually they started to become a little bit more complicated. So, I worked in this type of process for a couple of years. And then I wasn't busy in a darkroom anymore. And I'm going to leap forward a little bit. So I started to learn about using a digital camera. And so this is part of a series that I made, which was called The Food Rosary, where I was working with people and their fascination with food. And, and so I started to experiment with different layers but within a digital process. So Photoshop had arrived at this point. And I went from not knowing how to even send an email to being able to do this sort of thing in Photoshop. And then I started to go back to the kind of collage element, and I started to play with the collage techniques and with the kind of darkroom light techniques that I had been working with before. And we ended up with, around 2010, a series of works like this, where I'm both using collage, but I'm also painting within the computer. And I just need to explain that because I had a classical training, I don't have to think about how to paint. I can paint anything that looks like anything. And it's a very natural process for me to do that. And then the works started to look again like what I had been playing with back in the mid-90s. So I kind of went back to the monochrome look. And so I started, to really just play with the light. So I'm just painting with light here. So none of these people here are real. I've painted them. And then I sort of, around this time I had become a Buddhist. And so I was doing a lot of meditation, and I was starting to get interested in trying to create on a two-dimensional screen what I was seeing when I was meditating. So this slide is these are what they call hungry ghosts in Buddhism. So these are like the kind of visualization of souls that's are kind of lost somewhere. And you can see that the techniques that I had started with are starting to creep back in again. So it's becoming a bit more abstract. And then I started to do some very long, very complicated meditation techniques where I would spend, maybe 2 hours just doing one practice and getting very deep. And I started wanting to create visually what I had experienced when I was meditating, which comes in layers. I mean, if any of you meditate, you'll know that, sometimes you see stuff, sometimes you see nothing, sometimes you just see colors, but quite often you see imagery. So I'm going to jump here now to 2019, where I'm doing very complicated meditation rituals. And after I come out of the meditation, I'm still in a very strange state. And so I'm not physically present. I'm not consciously trying to do too much other than recreate what I have had in my head for hours. And so I started this series. And the series is very long because every meditation, it grew. So, this is near the start of the whole process. And this is one which is maybe 10 days after the one that we looked at before. And you can see that the imagery is starting to get more abstract. And then this is one probably another few days afterwards as well. And then this one, again, it's a little bit longer. This one is probably about 30 days into the process. So the more I became immersed in the meditative process, the deeper I'm going to call them paintings, although they're made on a computer, but they are painting. And it grows. And so the longer I went through the process, the more things would happen in this. So this one is one of the ones that came near the end of this 3-month, very immersive process. And it's getting a bit more abstract. And then we start to get things like this happening, where again, the painterly qualities are coming back into this. And there's lots of different bits in between, but I'm just sort of giving you sort of highlights of the series, and you can sort of see the progression. And it keeps coming back to what I had originally been doing in the darkroom. At least for me, it feels like that it comes back to this, just what light does, and the negative of a light. So it's very much like a black and white negative, because sometimes in the meditative state, that's how you see things. It kind of gets reversed. We can see here a little bit of color is creeping into this one. And again, it's getting a little bit more consciously being aware of how the light is working within all of the different layers that are here. So I think you can see the process here. And then we sort of start to become more of a story. So these are quite complicated pieces that take quite a long time to create, but they're all about the layers that were built up in the previous years. And then, well, let's see. This is the latest series of work that I'm working on, and it has to do with what we're all going through, which is, COVID times. And these are based on, roughly the old imagery of the plague doctors. And to me, they started to look like birds. And well, I'm not even really sure what I should say about these. I mean, again, I'm not really that conscious when I'm actually making them. So what comes out is what comes out. These are quite new. And these are all sort of studies for a mural that I'm working on, which is using a combination of technical techniques and traditional painterly techniques, and which I hope will be completed by the end of January 2022. And let me just push this up here. Just have a look at the, oops, 1 second now, where am I? Stop the share. Okay, so okay, so we have like about 13 minutes to go. I'm going to see, are there any questions? I'm not really that good about talking about my own work, I just kind of do it, but where I want this to go and where I see the huge possibilities are that as blockchain develops, as NFTs develop, as all of these technologies, which are just in their infancy, develop, the processes that are going to emerge for artists are going to be huge. And most artists just react, they get something like we find some stones and some leaves on a beach and we start making something out of it. And it's exactly the same with the technology. Well, that's kind of my presentation. But let's see. Any questions? Okay, I guess no questions. For those of you who don't know me, I'm currently doing the unit master's class, and I'm learning about this technology as we go. And I'm hoping to produce the first NFT, or my first NFT, by the end of this month. and I have absolutely no idea where this is going to go. This could go anywhere. This is like those cave paintings, you know? I've seen something, I'm dipping into it, and it can go anywhere. Did I experiment with psychedelics? No, never. I I think I was, you know, born with being able to get to that kind of place that people talk about just naturally. When did I discover arts? I was always going to be an artist. I think my parents had tremendous plans for me to go to proper university and, you know, become a lawyer or an economist or something like that. And I just said no. And so I went to art college when I was 16, back in the mid 70s. So I've always been an artist. And, you know, uh, I've been quite reclusive the past 20 years, but in the mid to late 80s, I did sell a lot of work in Europe mainly, and they were paintings. And then I just sort of decided I didn't really want to kind of be out in public anymore. The major influences on my style, pop art, Andy Warhol, Dada, and classical painting. You know, how did I pick my teachers? Well, I didn't pick my teachers; they just fell in front of me. That was it. I I liked being able to paint something that looks like something. And as you can all probably hear from my accent, I'm Irish. And back in the late 70s, you know, Ireland was a very, very primitive and poor country. And so the only sort of, you know, I guess in my head, I was like, I wanted to paint a person that looked like a person. And that involved an awful lot of practice of painting from life, of drawing from life. I was very lucky that I had teachers who were able to teach me those techniques, which aren't very often taught in art schools nowadays, I must say. How did I know something is really meaningful to me? I don't know. I just like stuff. I mean, I am not sure whether something has to be meaningful. You know, I when I make when I make art or when I make something, I'm just making something. Um, at this point in my artistic career, I don't think about what I want to make. I just start doing something and something happens. Um,
Question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, can I ask the question in person?
Sure.
Right now, you said that you were not wanting to be around people anymore. Right now, you are still in that same phase, or you kept walking and found yourself in a different zone?
No, you know, it's and it probably touches back on what some of the previous speakers were talking about. The art market is a whole industry in itself, and it's a difficult place to navigate. Um, and it, you know, quite often I mean, I was very lucky. I found galleries that wanted my work, but they wanted my work always, this is back in the late 80s, they wanted my work to always be exactly what they wanted to sell. And as an artist, I just wasn't developed. You know, I was painting from my head and not from my heart. And I wanted to experiment. And there wasn't room for that back then. And so I just decided to do something else that I didn't have to cater to paint what people wanted me to paint. So I did other things. I took up photography, and photography, you just go out, you do a job and it's done. You know, so I became a press photographer, and I was a fashion photographer, and a wedding photographer. And let me tell you, the only thing that really pays is wedding photography. And you know, and then when I started to get interested in how to work with a digital camera, I decided to learn about web design. And so I just immersed myself in that, and I liked what it could do. And I think it's the same thing with blockchain. If I can, once I figure out how it actually really works, and figure out how to manipulate the algorithms, like many other artists, I think that we can actually make it do things that we can't even possibly imagine. You know, like the cave painting that Zach was talking about. You know, see a shadow and you think, okay, that's interesting. And you know, we're at the very beginning of this whole new thing, and I don't think anybody knows where it's going to go.
I'm really excited to have someone like you so interested in thinking about the future of crypto. I think in this planet we have very few role models, and in Asian cultures, these elders were supposed to guide us, you
That's
know,
right.
and teach us like things about life that would help us, and we don't have that right now. And I think if we bridge this connection between the wise people we have right now and these future possibilities with technology, we are doing like our little part of favor to the world. Thanks to Yip here, who
Yes.
organizes the master's program. Share the link there, Yip, please, with everybody. It's free blockchain education for everybody. Mary, what else you want to leave us with? A message?
You know, I would
contact?
say, you know, just like I discovered in that downtime while I was waiting for something to process, that the little accidents that you discover, they lead to major changes. So just when something happens by accident, don't dismiss it, explore it.
That's beautiful. We should explore that cyber attack and create like a flash mob out of that or something.
Yes, yes.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Zach, whenever he's ready, he's going to, I think Christine is not here yet. So we have some more time to talk. Yeah, NFT flash mob. That was brutal. I'm sorry for that. But I don't think Yip was here, right? Can you talk? I'm asking you to unmute, but it doesn't work. I'm sorry. You can
No,
claim
I just read
co-host.
about it.
Yeah. Wasn't fun at the time, but it became fun after, you know,
Yeah.
just kids.
We can make something out of it, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I want
I'm
to
sure
see that
Zach
painting,
can.
Mary. I want to
I
see
mean,
that.
it was, I'm assuming that the language was Russian, that all the comments that were going in, I didn't understand any of it. Do we
It
have any
sounds very
Russian speakers?
here. Not that. No, I don't think so. No. We have the team, but they're not here right now. Kat is Russian, Dimitri is Russian, but they're not here right now. That's awesome. Anything else, Mary?
I would like to hear more from Zach. You know, his presentation was great.
Compared to your artwork. No, Mary, I'm so impressed with the work you do and all the philosophy behind it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. NFTing the flash mob.
Awesome. Guys, we are waiting for our next speaker, so we can go and get some water, maybe. Take a little break. Thank you again, Mary. It was a pleasure to see your art and to hear your story. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Mary, can you post some links where we can see the art again?
Sure.
Thank you.
You know what? I don't even have it, most of it up on my own website. You know, that's typical of most. I've been planning to do it, you know, but I can give you my website. Not that there's a whole lot on there, but here we go. Got the dots
Awesome.
right.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
the other website, because this is the other part of me, is that, yes. So I practice a form of esoteric Buddhism, and that takes up several hours a day.
Yeah, yeah. It's a privilege, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm working towards that. I'm not there yet, but I'll get there.
I don't think anyone is there yet. If we were there yet, we'd leave the planet. We'd be gone.
Yes. Wonderful.